every one of us has to do our share to ensure a much more civilized world.
Eryl Court is a lifetime peace activist. She's a member of the Canadian Voice of Women for Peace, the Canadian Peace Alliance, and the Hiroshima Day Coalition. I got a chance to catch up with her at her cottage to discuss the role of individual agency in making peace a reality.
Certainly, it's quite true. We have to be peaceful ourselves. If I preach peace, but I'm not a peaceful, good person, as far as I'm able to, it's no good for me to preach peace, but practice war, say in personal relations or otherwise. That's one of the things, in my view, that I have to be concerned about, and I think everybody who's involved in our work has to be concerned about.
This idea of peace, some people may say that this is a necessarily contested term, that people don't agree on what is peace, and what is peace for one group may be oppression for another group, maintenance of the status quo. Do you think this is true, or do you think there's a universal basis for understanding of what peace is?
I think so. And I would use the analogy of, for example, what used to be called in our Western history the Wild West. Now, when the West was being first settled and the white man was moving forward to areas which had perhaps only previously been inhabited by Aboriginals and so forth, the law of the gun prevailed. And it was only when some young man who was perhaps exceptionally brave and hardy, who would come along, who would stand for the interests of the community, that law began to prevail in communities where previously there had been no law except that of the gun. I regard that as a proper analogy for our international community. I think any civilized society has to be ruled by law. In other words, violence is not acceptable, whether it's my violence or anybody's violence. And where we have differences of opinion, which frequently occur, and differences of viewpoint, we increasingly have to accept the fact that these have to be settled without resort to personal violence. And the only acceptable use of physical force, in my view, is in the service of law. So that, say, in an individual situation, if somebody unfortunately has gone insane or has decided to take the law into his or her own hands, then finally the police force, which is also properly described as the peace force, has to move in to assure that that individual, or sometimes that group, might be the mafia, does not further disturb the peace. And that is a known principle of society. If law does not rule, if the will of the community does not rule, then there is anarchy and no safety basically for anyone. And we are in a pretty anarchic state in our present global village, in my view. That's the view that I have.